right. Can I get started? Martha, are you okay? Yes, good. So thank you for being here. This is something that Rory and I are very excited to present because we've been working on this since 2025, the last part of 2025. So it's been a long time coming, but it was great, mainly because we were supported. So I'll give you some context as to explain how that playbook came about. And next slide, please, Rory. So the first part will be the context, and then we'll be presenting what the playbook is, and then Rory's gonna give you some other information on how you can get involved, and also some demo of some sample extension that he's been working on. Next slide. So for context, Rory and I participated in open source community training by the Center for Science. Sorry, Rory, the presenter's view is, yeah. All right, cool. Thank you. So the Center for Scientific Collaboration and Community Engagement, it was a program called Bordero, and it was mainly to bring people together from the open source world to share and then create those playbooks to help their own community. So it was the first iteration. So we were part of the pilot cohort of the Bordero training course. And it was separated in two parts. The first part was workshops and lightning talks, and it was these the ones that are listed. All the open source projects are the ones that we were working together with. We were presenting our projects, and we discovered that there was a wide range of maturity. Some older projects, like the Dataverse and the R project, were much older and more similar to OpenRefine, where there was a lot of existing documentation that was a little bit everywhere and sometimes difficult to navigate, especially if you don't really know what the project is to begin with. But there were others that were at the very beginning of the project, sometimes two members, sometimes still university projects. It was very fun to see how everybody was sitting in the spectrum of maturity, and we could still share our experiences and learn from each other. So there was a big part of sharing, and there were also uh, uh, course materials on different topics related to open source community. So what is the governance or the types of governance in an open source community? How do we make decisions? The types of decision-making processes. And what it helped us putting words on the structures that we were sometimes familiar with, and sometimes just we got a feel for the community we were working with or working in, but we couldn't put that into words. So that gave us the vocabulary to move on to the next step, which worry next slide, which was creating that community playbook. So once we had the vocabulary, once we could position ourselves within the spectrum of open source communities, we had to do first an audit of all or most of the documentation that was existing. So what we had, what we didn't have, what we couldn't find, what we could probably gather from other people. And we had to put, so that was a spreadsheet. It was much longer, but we just put a little screenshot of all the questions we had to answer. So we had this kind of this map, this knowledge map of what was existing at OpenRefine and what we needed to put together to complete some parts or to make more sense for whatever community we were trying to engage with. And then we had some presentations that would tie into what we had learned before, and it was an exploration of uh, how those, in our case, we had the kind of a unique case where the governance wasn't so much a governance of OpenRefine, but more the governance of an extension, which are completely separated, but also linked together. So we had to think of how the governance work and what what is involved in creating an extension and how that can be incorporated into a playbook. And we also had to think of all the stakeholders. So what is the interface between the community and the extension? So it could include the core dev group, it could include users, it could include potential collaborators. So all of those people we had to keep in mind so that they would be included and they would have a playbook that would speak to them as well. And that if we added something to that playbook that would impact the core dev group, we had to let them know at some point in the process. So we had to have this big map of all the information that we needed to gather, but also all of the people who would be impacted by this playbook. And of course, the biggest stakeholder for us was the creators of the future playbooks and even the existing ones. But we were thinking and what the next ones are going to require so that they create a playbook that is an ideal playbook in our mind. So we want them to succeed and we want them to work well with the community. And what came out of that was the extension developers playbook that we released to do I have another slide? I think I have another one, Rory. I think with the I forget. Let's see.
I think then the next one is our
That's
back
here.
to the
Okay,
agenda.
so all right, so because I was thinking of the reviewing process, but that's way further down. So we had that idea of the playbook and who it would reach out to, and we're at the point now where we're kind of making it public and we're presenting it. So I'll let Rory explain what the playbook is and how it can help you create a better better extension. So up to you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so this next section is going to be about yeah, how we took yeah, that great web of materials that Julie talked about, and yeah, formulated into the extension developer playbook. Then after that, um, I'll talk about some of the work that was created by things that came up during the course but didn't necessarily fit into the playbook itself. Um, so a brief overview of kind of the purpose of this playbook. This is meant to kind of bolster the extension ecosystem in OpenRefine. Um, Obviously, it provides a lot of extra functionality that is maybe relevant to a subset of the OpenRefine community, but within that subset is kind of a core requirement. We see a lot of things like the Wikidata extension. Um, Things like that. But the extension ecosystem has been relatively under-resourced relative to other parts of the community. And with generative AI making extension development a little more feasible for more people, we wanted to kind of make sure that we put some guidelines in place to help people, or kind of help facilitate extension development as this potential demographic grows. Um, and then yeah, just kind of enumerate some norms and social guidelines for the community. So the audience is any current but also potentially future extension developers, and we're hoping that this can uh, provide some clarity that reduces the number of outdated extensions, provide clear guidance to contributors outside of the main code base, and kind of think about how extensions relate to the core code base. And we also wanted to make sure that the communication between extension developers, the core community, made kind of flows nicely. Um, yeah, and just get, generally a more community engagement with the extension development process. Um, and yeah, we also wanted to just provide a few words on offboarding, so that we can kind of give extension developers the license to or social permission to let us know when, they might be feeling like it's time to move on. The overall format of the playbook, we currently have it on the documentation website. So under the technical manual, in the extensions, it lives alongside the extension technical reference, which is more of the nuts and bolts of how extensions work and what parts of the code base. So this is really meant to address, um, yeah, one of the six W's of project planning: who, what, when, where, why, and how. I think I got on. And so we structured this as kind of a series of milestones that could potentially apply to each extension. We didn't want to be overly prescriptive in how how we made suggestions for people to carry out their development. But so we just wanted to kind of give a high level overview of some sections when people might want to check in with the broader community, and also how to think about each of these milestones during development. So I'll just go briefly over the contents. So we have our before getting started. This answers kind of the why and the who. So give you some resources to think about why you're making this extension and who you should reach out to, and kind of how the project governance works. So it's in this section that we establish a kind of governance model that we learn to identify in the course as a duocracy. So kind of giving people this permission to take charge and be autonomous within their extension, that this kind of represents that the people who are doing the work are the people responsible for the work, and yeah, it just kind of helps provide some structure around thinking of how you set up your extension, just from the start. Um, Ideation is kind of after this, once you have an idea and you want to, yeah, maybe find inspiration from the community. So this is a reference to something like our gold post page, the extension directory, um, and just kind of gives people who are looking for extension development experience, just some ways to get involved. Um, After that, we move on to development. This is kind of where we introduce some resources on like the sample extension, uh, some relevant blog posts on engaging in discussions and reviews. Um, yeah, and I think this is more, um, yeah. Oh, and then we also have, yeah, this includes the section on uh, how to engage with the core code base. Like, let's say you are developing an extension and you realize that either something would work a lot better if there were some changes to the upstream code base, or maybe you just have some feedback as you develop your extension. This provides a little more guidance on how to engage with the rest of the community on that. And then finally, we have a section on testing your prototype. Um, so we have, um, yeah, just some recommendations for how to go about getting feedback from community members and how to use some of the tooling available for the core OpenRefine code base, for your extension specifically. And then the final sections, after you've moved out of testing, ideation, development, then we have our general release. So the extension directory that we have on the website includes some of this information, but we wanted to provide a more structured kind of recommendation for how people can provide information about their extension so that other people in the community can discover the extension, can discover how to get in touch with the extension maintainers. Yeah, and so this is just a series of tips for kind of helping the community find your release and understand your extension and its goals. The maintenance section then offers recommendations for finding a sustainable maintenance schedule for yourself or for potential extension developers. Um, so we have um, yeah, there's resources on compatibility checks, core OpenRefines software, um, and yeah, I think just some basic tips on maintaining an open source project. And then finally, we know that things change over time. We have a few notes on offboarding, so just things that are helpful to consider when developing an extension. And yeah, if you could just send the community a quick note before you decide to take a step back, I think that's always appreciated. Yeah, so the Julie talked about the reviewing process. Yeah, so briefly, once we had developed the playbook, we shared it with the advisory committee. Jan, Esther, Martin had to greenlight it before we moved on. And then we talked to the core developer group. We shared um, the early draft with some key contributors before opening it up to a general pull request. And now we're in the general review and ongoing maintenance phase. So this is yeah, where the general public comes in, the broader community. Yeah, this is if you notice any gaps or things that could be clarified, just anything at all, feel free to reach out.
So I noticed in the playbook that in the maintenance section, we're saying that there are two main steps that will ensure, and I see compatibility checks, and it says we're currently looking for beta testers. But it doesn't tell me how I can contribute, like how I can become one of those testers. Rory, how would I contribute and edit the playbook so I can add this with the information? Do you know how I could do that?
Oh, that's a great question, Julie. I'll share my screen again. And um, yeah, so all of the pages on the website have this edit this page, and that will open this up in GitHub. And yeah, we can see that we have um, compatibility checks here. Um, I don't have the link handy to compatibility checks, but we can go ahead and uh, yeah, edit the document here. We have the link to um, the compatibility checks with the core code base. We can come back and click commit changes. But for the time being, I will cancel these because I don't have a nice tidy commit ready to go. But once this happens, you can open a pull request on the website, and that is where the discussion on your contribution will happen. So nothing is overwritten by default. This is you can make whatever changes you want, and you won't be interfering with other people's development. This will all be localized to a specific branch. Does that answer the question you were hoping to talk about,
Yeah,
Julie?
can do I need a GitHub account for this, or can I just do it if I navigate the page and click edit?
I think you do need a GitHub account because ultimately that will be what's attached to the pull request and your changes. So you do
Right.
need a GitHub account. Otherwise, you
And a forum
can.
account maybe so I can discuss it, or do I just need the GitHub account for this?
The GitHub, yeah, the GitHub account is just for updating the website. Forum account then would be to, yeah, a helpful place to talk about um, yeah, the playbook and any issues you may have noticed. So that's a good way to kind of get a nice kind of clarification from the community if this is something that's um, necessary or would be helpful. And yeah, that would be a separate forum account to start that discussion. Um, and yeah, we can go over to the forum and yeah, either development and design or community, I think are reasonable places for those to go.